This is the first podcast of Straight Talk, and I'm Noel Lee. And with me today is my first guest and a very special guest indeed. I'm very honored to have Angelo Giuliano as my guest. Hello, Angelo.
Hi, Noel. I'm glad to be on the first guest. I mean, it's an honor for me. I'm actually very excited that you're doing a great job. I love your channel.
Thank you very much. So, for those who don't really know who you are, could you maybe just take a moment and let those new viewers know a bit more about yourself, and then we can go from there.
So my name is Angelo Giuliano. My parents were Italians, and I grew up in Switzerland. And so I was working 25 years ago in the financial industry, and I decided to go to China to study Chinese. So it's been 25 years in China. So I had experienced many different sides of China, from Taiwan to the mainland, like deep inside. I used to live in Yunnan province and Shanghai. And the last 3 years I've been in Hong Kong. And I've been experiencing what was happening in Hong Kong. And this is when I decided to speak out, because I felt there was a lot of bias reporting. And I thought it was my responsibility as a citizen just to tell the truth about what was going on.
Right. So yeah, since you mentioned that, because the first time I actually saw you in Prince Edward Station, outside, and you were telling somebody, and I'll remember these words forever: look into the mirror. You are Chinese. So my question is, what were you feeling at the point of time, and when did you start to become so vocal?
Well, I think it's important to put everything into the context. Back then, during those days, you had beatings of mainland Chinese on a daily basis. I mean, from morning till evening, we had riots in the streets. And so it was within that context. And you had also some people in Hong Kong that were waving foreign flags and so on. So I think for me, it was important just to really expose the absurdity of what they were doing. I mean, basically, they were supported by foreign powers. They were financed, trained. It was an attempt of a color revolution. So when I said a few things to those writers, I mean, I was actually using the pro-protesters media. I jumped in front of them, and I wanted to, because we don't have any voice there, So I wanted to jump in front of them and just tell them about what I was thinking, and why I was saying, well, you get yourself in the mirror. It's because, and that they are Chinese, but because they've been brainwashed in them being a part of the British Empire or so on. And I think it's about just ignorance. It's a young generation that has not experienced Hong Kong under colonial rule. And so they don't know about the whole history and the reality. So I was very frustrated because, there's I saw that they were willing to betray their motherland and betray not only their motherland, they were betraying their parents and their ancestors. And I had remember, during that time, I had only 2 minutes to make a point. So basically, I just said a few things. It was very dangerous for me, so I just said it and just left. But I wish I could develop much more about the reason what is behind this movement, and it has nothing to do with democracy or freedom.
Right. I think you mentioned a good point there. You said that you were in danger. I mean, do you still feel in danger now, or after that? What was your feeling?
No, not anymore. But there was for at least 1 year. You have to keep everything into perspective. For 1 year, you had what I call the silent majority in Hong Kong. Most of the Hong Kong people are not politicized. They are very down to earth. Hong Kong is a very competitive place, and people, they have a tough life. They need to pay the bills and so on. So and they don't vote. But the only time when you see those people is when you have petitions. So there were two petitions which are very important. One petition was for the national security law, and there were like 3 million people that signed that petition. So, and later on, you had a petition for the electoral reform, and 2.4 or 2.6 million people signed that petition. So, what I want to say by this is that the only people you would see were the very vocal, aggressive protesters, and the silent majority, they didn't speak out. For the single fact that because we were denied the voice, because we were threatened. If you had to speak out, you'd be beaten up. They would expose your data. They were doing doxing. So basically, they did it to me. They exposed the picture of my son, 3 years old. They exposed my phone number. They were very evil. So whenever people would clean up the streets, you saw some videos, they would beat those people. So and it was very much in contradiction with what they were preaching. It was very anti-democratic, and it was suppressing all freedoms. So I think for me it was important at some point, just when it got to an extreme where I felt threatened. When I was going out with my family. Well, we didn't dare to speak Mandarin, and then when I started to speak out, I was going out only in a few areas in Hong Kong, just the central safe areas, but I was wearing a cap, sunglasses, and a mask. So I'm asking, if I feel threatened, is there democracy? Is it freedom of speech? The same that were preaching for freedom of speech and democracy were the ones suppressing my right as a citizen to live in Hong Kong in peace and security.
You made a very good point there, Angelo. You said that you were feeling, insecure and unsafe. That sounds to me like you are oppressed, isn't it? And that is also the rhetoric that the Western media is saying, that there are some people in Xinjiang, China, that are being oppressed. But when I was there, I didn't feel such things. Nobody was covered up in a hat and a mask and feeling like their life is threatened. To me, it was it was good. But that's another subject. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, again, it's I don't think it's that brave for me. As a foreigner, keep in mind that the protesters, they were, looking up to foreigners. They look down on Chinese. And basically, I was in security. I doubt they would ever beat a foreigner. And I took like a measured risk. Whenever I was cleaning up the streets and I was facing them, you had always like the media and cameras there pointing at us. So because I had to play it safe. And when I confronted them, the cameras, I had on my back, I had the police. But otherwise, it was very dangerous. I had there's a moment, where I had a protester who took a stone and he was coming towards me. And I don't know if you remember, there were a few cases where they would take a person, a cleaner, and they would take a stone and just hit the stone in the head of the person. And I was like that close. I was this close. The person was coming towards me with the stone on the hand. And it was very scary, but I don't know. I felt it was the right thing to do. And again, it was never confrontation one-to-one. I'm not scared of a confrontation one-to-one. They were very coward. They were jumping like 10 people on one person, and I felt really bad for those other Chinese. Just innocent. I felt bad for them. And I felt that my home, because Hong Kong, after all, it's also my home, was about to be destroyed. There's 500 meters from my home. They put a bomb, a small bomb. But again, it's a bomb. This is terrorism. We have to call this by their real name. At some point, it was terrorism, nothing else.
Yeah, you make a very good point. Like I said, you were on the ground. You did what any righteous person would do, and I think a lot of Hong Kongers appreciate you, and I think that's just the way to do it. So I'm gonna move on, ask and talk about this because I do have on and off talks with my friends in Singapore.
Yeah.
And although it's just one friend, I kind of believe that since he's not actually on my train of thought, that he would be representing a good portion of the other side. So they were saying that this entire situation happened because China is wrong for breaking the 50-year agreement, which actually meant that China will not interfere with Hong Kong affairs. Thus, the one country, two systems. Can you empathize and see their point of view? And can you just give these opinions a factual perspective for us?
Absolutely. Well, think about it. I'm just going to answer with one question. To whom it benefit to protect the one country, two system? Originally, one country, two system, it was a very smart move from China. It was related not only to Hong Kong, but related to Taiwan. So China all along wanted to show Taiwan that one country, two system was a possibility for a reunification of Taiwan with China. So imagine, the last entity that wanted to destroy the one country, two system was China. It did, for 25 years, China's never, ever meddled in Hong Kong's affair, never. And actually, the problem of Hong Kong was because China never meddled into the Hong Kong affair. There's one thing which is very interesting. They keep on calling, one country, two system. You're not respecting the one country, two system. But there's before one country, two system. There's the term one country. One country, it means sovereignty. You cannot have two systems if you don't have the one country. If you don't respect the Chinese sovereignty, and you are calling for sedition, you are conspiring with foreign powers, you are actually the one not respecting the one country, two system. So this is why we had Article 23 of the Basic Law, which is ensuring, the sovereignty of China over Hong Kong, which was enacted in 2020. And by the way, in China, they did try to enact this law in 2003, but the opposition, they did everything they could in their power just to stop that. So the thing is that who had interest to destroy this is very simple. The USA. The USA, since before 1997, they had already started to plant the seeds for color revolution in Hong Kong. So they had their hands, they invest into media, into political parties, into civil society, the same as they do whenever they want a color revolution. That's not something that is done overnight. It's something they plant the seed a long time before. So it was in interest of the US, and also very, very important, the DPP, the DPP of Taiwan, they were active supporters financially and in logistics. They supported the protest in Hong Kong. Simple reason, before the riots, Tsai Ing-wen had only 30% of support. She was very marginal. She had no chance to win in Taiwan election. Because of the riots, timing was extremely, very well done. After the riots, she ended up winning by 60%. So you see what I think was a very smart move by Tsai Ing-wen. And so you see, why am I calling those protesters useful idiots? Because they were just the idiots of the US, and they were the useful idiots of the DPP of Taiwan. Why, when you're going, again, I'll take a saying of Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan used to say, don't fight a war you cannot win. You want independence for Hong Kong. Why don't you look from China's perspective? Do you ever think for 1 second that China would accept Hong Kong independence? You see, this is just ignorance, In Chinese, they say, 知己知彼, know yourself and know your enemy. They don't have the basic knowledge and wisdom. If you want to fight, if you want to do politics, you need to have wisdoms. On the Chinese perspective, what happened is that in reality, and I thought this all along, in reality, this setback became an opportunity. You see, a lot of people, they think that the handover of Hong Kong to China happened in 1997. I don't believe so. In 1997, Hong Kong was still, Hong Kong politics, democracy was hijacked by the US and Western powers. The real handover happened in 2020 when China and Hong Kong enacted the national security law. And this is the real handover. Now, we are finally on the path to have a viable one country, two system. Additional to that, there was an electoral reform. And the electoral reform just made sure that, first of all, only patriots, people that would respect the one country, two system, would be able to enter into politics. Additional to that, they gave less power to the tycoons. It's very important to understand that the tycoons in Hong Kong are the ones that were actually benefiting from the status quo. They were actually playing both sides. They have their hands on most of the land. And as you know, housing is one of the main issues. So they were capitalizing on high prices and the fact that they wouldn't release the land. So now, actually, I feel very, very positive about the future of Hong Kong. Now, and I'm willing to stay in Hong Kong because, again, if there's no national security law enacted, I would have left Hong Kong. It was not viable. It was just crazy. It was about just to fall into the Syria, Libya trap. It was just madness.
Now, I'd like to just add on to that by making a conclusion, basically a summary, right? So we are trying to say that the people who are giving their comments from outside of Hong Kong and China, they don't actually know what is going on. Would that be the final, the factual conclusion on that?
Absolutely. But again, this requires more education. That's a problem of education. You see, I'm coming up with those points. Why? Because I have studied what happened in Ukraine, the Maidan Revolution. I have studied, I'm actually studying what is happening in Myanmar. Things don't happen overnight. Why? It's not that simple. It's not what people are looking at. They're looking at a snapshot. You do a snapshot, and it's not accurate. You need to learn about history. You need to know the whole geopolitical context, and who are the participants and to whom chaos benefits. So when you have kids that are claiming, oh, we are going to lose freedom, and they are manipulated on the level, emotional level. You tell a person, oh, you know what, you are going to lose your freedom. If you are emotional, you panic. But then if you start to work with the different side of the brain, the rational brain, and you go, okay, what was Hong Kong before? Do you know that Hong Kong was never democracy? Hong Kong has never been so democratic as now. It was a colony before. And before that, China, Hong Kong is part of the 100 years of humiliation of China. It's only natural that Hong Kong is going back to China, and you have Chinese roots and so on. Now, you need to learn about how the colored revolution work, and you need to know that there's a Obama issued a pivot to Asia policy that was to hate China. And how can you hit China? You can hit China through Tibetan independence movement. You can hit China through Xinjiang. You can hit China through Hong Kong. You can hit China through the Belt and Road Initiative in Myanmar, in Thailand. But the problem is that those kids don't have this knowledge. This is why, it's very easy to manipulate kids, because how they brainwash them was through, those media that I call trash media, like Apple Daily, They were manipulated, every day in Hong Kong during the riots. They were showing movies. It was Winter of Fire, on Fire, which was about Maidan Revolution. So you see those kids watching this, and they're like, "Oh my God, I need to fight for my freedom. It's going to be the Holocaust. It's going to be, whatever. Just on the emotional level." And they would never debate on the rational level. You mentioned before China not respecting one country to system. You know what? I would always ask one question. Give me one time where China didn't respect one country to system. And you know what? They would never debate. Never, ever debate. I personally learned the basic law. I took the time to learn about the basic law, which is the Hong Kong mini constitution. Every single article, Also, there's one article they keep on mentioning, Article 45, which is, long term would be to elect on a universal suffrage the chief executive. But you know what? If you read carefully the article, it's exactly, China is following that article, one by one. So I took the time, I didn't jump like just into this, like blindly, I saw both sides. I saw the violence, where it came from, the violence and so on. I was on side. I saw that the violence started from the protesters. And there's a huge restraint from the police. I saw everything, and I come up with facts. The only problem is that I never got a voice. I was so frustrated, I got a voice only in the blue media, which are more like pro-Beijing. But I never got, my voice into the other media, the yellow media or Western media, because it's an inconvenient truth, it was very frustrating. So again, I've done my homework, I can answer any questions which is related to whatever they are complaining about Beijing and so on. And it's all false. It's all easy to debunk. The same as what is happening in Xinjiang. It's very easy to debunk. It's follow the money, follow the motives.
I think you hit the nail on the head right there, because you have got to do your own homework, and you have done that. And I'm learning from you as through all these interviews. I don't know everything, and majority of people, are getting their news and information from all these mainstream media. And it is quite evident that the mainstream media, as you have just illustrated, is not the ones that is doing their homework, because they have an agenda. So I think, you've hit the home run there, in my opinion. So I'd like to move along. There's obviously reports of many Hong Kong families uprooting to migrate to other countries for fear of Beijing, right? So, do you know exactly what these fears are about?
Well, it's the same as 1997. I could have understood in 1997 at the handover, there were quite a few that left, and I can understand that, because it was about ignorance. They thought there was a breakdown. China was really going to not to respect the one country two system. But you know what? Most of the people that left, they came back. Actually, the second generation came back. There's a huge community of kids, very excited in Hong Kong. It comes from that wave in 1997. They went to Australia and Canada and came back, because there's lots of opportunities in Hong Kong. So now, they've been calling, the UK has been saying, well, we are ready to accept 3 million people coming from Hong Kong. But you know what? Why would you go to places where you are going to be treated as a third-grade citizen? Look at the racism there is all around the world against Asians. Again, I think if there are some cases leaving, it's very, what are we talking about? Maybe hundreds? And most of them that are leaving are some that are very afraid that they've breached the law, and they want to leave because of breaching the law. So I think it's completely fake news. It's the same as, there's plenty of fake news there in Hong Kong. Like you mentioned before, Prince Edward Station, Back then, they were saying that hundreds of people disappeared. They were killed and disappeared, or they were taken by, to the mainland. And you know what? It was just all along fake news, because you cannot have like hundreds of people disappearing and no one is asking for the bodies. It was just all fake news. But they kept on saying that for 1 year. Every end of the month, on the 31st, they were celebrating. They were like, praying at Prince Edward Station for the people that supposedly died. So what is happening in Xinjiang is exactly the same. It's all, like, the bigger the lie, the more you repeat it, and the more people just swallow. It's just crazy. It's madness. And people don't learn. This is fake news. We've seen it all over again. We had this in Libya, we had this in Syria, like with supposedly gassing people, which was all fake. We had this in Iraq. Remember, when you had this girl like saying, oh, you know what, Iraqi, they were taking Viagra and raping women. They were taking kids, babies out of incubators, hundreds of them, And later on, we found out that she was paid by the PR firm, Kuwaiti, and was financed by the Kuwaitis, So the problem is that people just don't learn. They don't look for facts, in Chinese we say, 实事求是, look for facts. It's all about facts, Show me, I will investigate, and then I will take a position. But it's not about being emotional. No, it's facts.
Yes, it's all about the facts. And you said best, because when I was documenting my trip in Xinjiang, well, I have obviously some feeling inside to try to debunk all those claims about concentration camps and whatnots, right? And then, of course, I'll get the people that say, oh, you actually went to the city. Of course, they don't have the camps in the city. The burden of proof is on the accuser. It's not on the accused to say, it's not, right? I'm sure it's also common sense that is obviously not so common. Anyway, I'll move on. I was about to ask you the next question, which is, security laws aside, will Hong Kong ever go back to what it was before in the eyes of tourism? And I think I also struck a little bit about what happened in Xinjiang, because back in Xinjiang during the terrorist attacks and the riots, perhaps the same question was asked back then, would life go back to normal? So I guess now we're seeing life normal, but with heightened security. So I think that will be the same for Hong Kong, isn't it? With life going back to normal now, but there's still going to be some sense of something. Maybe not like to add on to that.
I would say much, much better. Keep in mind, I think national security law, well, of course, we are going to be more safe. Now this COVID, of course, everybody's suffering because of COVID, but I think I feel very confident. Then we are finally going to have, some reforms. Keep in mind that, we shouldn't demonize the opposition. I think the opposition, they had some legitimate claims which were related to social justice. Hong Kong has problems of its own. It's related to social justice and housing problems. But what happened is that the opposition was actually hijacked by the radicals, and basically it went from a social justice fight to an anti-Beijing fight. With national security law, electoral reforms, we are going to see some changes in terms of economy, and tourism, of course, is going to go back, like mainland, especially the tourists from the mainland. But additional to that, you need to look at the broader perspective, broader picture. Hong Kong is within the Greater Bay Area. It's going to form, there are lots of synergies, and it's going to be something just amazing, a powerhouse. Once you have those synergies within the Greater Bay Area. And I think mainland Chinese investors, they will invest much more into Hong Kong. I mean, before, what investor would be willing to invest into a place where there's a risk of a color revolution? Now there's much more confidence. I mean, personally, I'm an investor. I would be very bullish on Hong Kong, because now you have all the ingredients for prosperity. And keep in mind, prosperity of Hong Kong comes from China. Hong Kong is what it is because of China. It's prosperous because there's nothing otherwise. Hong Kong has been benefiting from its position of being the entry door to China. So it was benefiting from trading and from finance, but otherwise, other than that, there's nothing. You need to keep in mind that electricity and water comes from the mainland, and actually it's subsidized, and actually it's only going one way, because Hong Kong is actually not paying any taxes to the central government. Hong Kong is the only region in China that is not paying taxes. The central government has costs, security, army. There's lots of costs, that actually all the regions are paying. Hong Kong is not paying that, So mainland China has been very generous, but in the future is going to be even more generous. And I think it's also related to Taiwan. I think if in 30 years' time, China can show to the world, you see, this experiment of one country to system is a huge success. We are willing to do exactly the same system for Taiwan. This is the case, and this is what a lot of people didn't see. The ultimate goal is to get Taiwan peacefully reunited with the motherland. And I think it's a beautiful story. I think, we have 25 years ahead of us, until 2047, to have China to successfully bring back Hong Kong and to show the world one country to system works, and China all along kept its word and its promise.
Now, touching on what you just mentioned earlier about how, mainland China is the one that is prospering Hong Kong. But at the moment with COVID and the main Luohu and Futian borders still closed, obviously the impact from Shenzhen is not as drastic, because Shenzhen does not depend on Hong Kong's economic input for it to thrive. However, the same cannot be said about Hong Kong. Hong Kong depends on such influx of mainland tourists into the territory. And I've been hearing stories, I'm not sure if it's true, about how prices in Hong Kong are being slashed at retail outlets. So, how do you see this impact Hong Kong now that it has just gone through that wave of protests and now hit by COVID? And you are saying that you are bullish about Hong Kong's future, but currently, how does this potentially have a detrimental effect onto Hong Kong?
Short term, it's going to be difficult. We need to get this COVID passed. Once the COVID is passed, and this is not only going to be Hong Kong only. There's going to be a surge into consumption. I think because people have been confined for a long time, they are going to consume and so on. But then I can imagine, like Hong Kong becoming again the favorite destination of mainland Chinese tourists. If you see right now the retail industry in Hong Kong, keeping in mind that this is the main income. I don't know what's the impact of the tourists, but it's huge. They just like one shop out of 4 has been closed in Hong Kong. It's just dramatic. Hong Kong suffered from the riots and from the COVID-19, but I think it's going to be back. It's going to go back much stronger, much stronger. And again, there's a strong correlation with the Chinese economy. Chinese economy is doing extremely well. Hong Kong will follow, and actually even better than before. Very confident.
So finally, Angelo, I'd like to close off by this final question, which is, how do you think the younger generation of Hong Kong, the ones I'm talking about who are in primary school now, who has seen what has taken place in 2019 with the riots, and then putting on masks in 2020, what do you think their views would be on China?
What happened is most of what happened is related to ignorance. if you see the profile of those protesters, most of them they didn't even speak English. So they haven't been abroad, so they have a little understanding of outside Hong Kong what is happening, and most important, they've never been to mainland China. So what I would advise those kids, and again, I think they are the future. They've been lured into something wrong, but I would advise them to go just cross the border, go to Shenzhen and go. They were advocating for revolution of our time. They used to say revolution of our time and so on. But the real revolution is happening in mainland China. If they only saw what is happening there, they've been brainwashing those kids that all along to say, well, China is backwards. China is, they squat, they spit, all this brainwashing. Like Jimmy Lai used to say that mainland Chinese are locusts, while Jimmy Lai actually was born in Sichuan. He came when he was 13. So there's this sense, we say in Chinese, 自我感觉良好, meaning, you think you are the best and so on. But you know what? If they go to mainland China, they will realize, well, it's something just amazing. The future is happening there, and they have everything to gain out of that, and actually about their freedom. For China, they cherish diversity, they cherish freedoms and so on. It's the opposite of what one can think, and what the mainstream media are saying. So I would say, just look for facts. Expand your views, because you've been sadly manipulated. Just look for yourself. Just go and look. It's very interesting. If you look at the views of Hong Kong people living in mainland China, 95% of them, they just love China, and the same as Taiwanese. I don't know how many. I mean, it's huge. The population of Taiwanese living in mainland China, there's not a single one that will say that China is bad. Most of them, they love their lifestyle, and they love what is happening in China. So I would tell those Hong Kong kids, you should be proud to be Chinese. You are living a very special time in human history. It's a nation that has been humiliated for 120 years. Now it's regaining slowly its sovereignty, with Hong Kong, and maybe one day with Taiwan, and it's leading the world in a good sense. It's we're going from a colonized world to a multipolar world, and China all along has been the voice of the global South. So there's a future that actually the world might go into unipolar to a real democracy. Because right now it's not democratic, now it's like a hegemonic, while China will be much more democratic, and it would give a voice to the oppressed nations, the colonized nations, and I think it's going to be very exciting. Multipolar world is just extremely exciting, and it's going to be peace finally. Since World War II, there's never been peace. On the contrary, we are going to be, we're heading towards a fascist world, like a power which is very violent, which is not democratic. We could talk about this. China, in my views, China is way more democratic than many Western nations. It's more like of the people, by the people.
I grew up thinking always that the government is the one that's doing things for the people. But of course, as I grow up, especially in the last year or so, where we are more exposed and we try to dig up and research more on all these things, you discover it. The truth can't be hidden. So you discover that it's not the case for most systems in the world. And the system in China is clear. No matter how people say that it is, there's a saying, right? You can't change the party, but you can change the system, something like that. So I think what we urge the viewers is to have an open mind. We are not paid by the Chinese government to do this. It's done because we see the facts, we think of ourselves to have a certain level of common sense, and we can see how China has, number one, done what they have done for the people in the past 20 years. They have controlled a very deadly pandemic to what it is today. And even as we speak now, at this recording, there is surges in India, and our hearts go out to these people, and we hope that it gets controlled really soon. So I think at the end of the day, I'm just trying to say that, we have to be looking at the facts again. Let's not be too quick to judge what we see on TV. I always know that whatever is filmed, if it's filmed, it can be edited even like this, but we are having a real talk, a straight talk, and you can see for yourself that what we're doing here is just to bring to you as much as possible what we see on the ground, and hopefully that we can now move on to this path to, like you said, a better world, a peaceful world. Angelo?
Yeah, Noel, you and I, we are both foreigners. I mean, again, I'm not Chinese, and I was always neutral. China has been fair to me. I've been treated well, and why I came out, it's not because I'm crazy about the Communist Party or crazy about China. No, China is I felt it was unfair. It's just a citizen that is standing up and say, well, you know what? I've been in China for 25 years. You're lying? Why are you lying? It's not right, it's just, it's not what I saw. And I have firsthand experience. So I'm very frustrated because you have self-proclaimed expert like Adrian Zenz and many foreigners, they maybe they went to China, they spent like 1 year learning Chinese and so on, and they go back to their own countries and they paid to fabricate lies. And me, I've been 25 years in China, and I can say China is not perfect. It's not, but you know what? China needs to be what Chinese want China to be. It's not about foreigners looking with the foreign lenses that is going to be the right judgment. It's about Chinese. What do they want for their society, for the future of their country? And, again, facts, there's a Howard study. Again, we cannot blame Howard to be too pro-Chinese, but, it says that 95% of people are supporting the CPC. What more than this type of legitimacy? It's not, sometimes we keep on saying, well, you know what, one person, one vote, universal suffrage and so on, that's the legitimacy. And I say, no, the result is how much support you get from your people. So in the US, you have a fake democracy ruled by the elites for the 1%. But then at the end, you have 30% of the people that support the Congress. That's not legitimacy. This is a fake democracy. So I just want to say facts, again, I'm a foreigner. At the end of the day, my heart is in my country. I'm Italian. I love my country. I became Swiss. I have 2 passports. I love my country, my culture. But what I'm saying is that, you are aiming for war. You are pointing at the wrong country. If there's one country, and I'm talking about facts, that is aiming for peaceful emergence, it's China. Facts, for 50 years, there's no, China hasn't attacked anyone. There's no meddling. It doesn't want interference in other countries. And it doesn't want other countries to interfere in its affairs. It's just different values. The problem is that it's very hard for foreigners just to look with Chinese eyes. That's impossible. And the problem is that Western education is based on the fact that Western values are supposed to be universal, and that's wrong. That's anti-democratic. Western values are not universal. There's plenty of different values, and the same as human rights. They place in the West, we place one vote to be human rights. In China, it's about real stuff. It's putting food on the plates, access to education, universal health coverage, expanding life expectancy. I'm asking, 500,000 people dying in the US because of COVID. I'm asking, where are those people human rights? I'm asking that. For China, those are the real human rights. So the problem is that really it's about multipolar world and thousands of ways to look at things, because we have different cultures. So we cannot be objective, like a foreigners cannot be objective at looking at China. After 25 years, I start to say, well, I thought 25 years ago, after 1 year, I thought I was an expert. 25 years later, I realized that I have so much more to learn about China. Why? Because you become humble. It's very complex, and I have a strong bias. I was born foreigner. I'm not going to be Chinese overnight. But I start understanding, and I look at facts. Facts are the best teachers. Look at what China was before 25 years ago when I was there. Look at what it is now, and look at where it is going. And it's just amazing. It's just amazing. I could talk for a while, but it's amazing to see a nation that is looking in terms of next generations, while in the West, like in the US, they are looking at the next election. And it's not how you build a society. You don't build a society. It's about, they're fighting for the next election, but they're not fighting on delivering for the people. It's, at the end of the day, it's about bringing prosperity to people. That's what people are looking for. What average people are looking for. It's just to have a safe family, safe environment, and live longer lives and healthy. And that's simple.
Right, Angelo, we can go on and talk about this for hours, but yeah. So I thank you very much for your time. I'm sure I will be inviting you back to the show again. I love your input. I'd like to pick your brain on it. So thank you again very much for this session. I really appreciate it. And is there any final words for our audience?
I just want to thank you. Noel, you are among the people that started like lately, 2019, 2020, same as Cyrus Johnson, Daniel Dumbrell. We are people. We are, we are not looking for recognition and so on. But I think we have something in common, that we want to fight for justice. There's injustice. And I think more and more people will be inspired by speaking out. We need more people like you. And I think what you're doing right now with these YouTube videos, I think it's very good. It's for educating people and for peace. So I want to say, just keep it up, Noel. You're doing a good job.
Thank you very much, Angelo. So with that, I'm Noel Lee, and this has been Straight Talk. Thank you, Angelo.
Thank you.